Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. I'll go to Shri Prabhupada. Guru Maharaj, we have still five devotees on the line. Shall we start or should we wait, Guru Maharaj? Guru Maharaj, you are on mute, Guru Maharaj.
It's a little early. I came on because I'm playing with my internet here. It's not working so good. So, yeah, I'll continue. We still got 2 or 3 minutes before the program officially starts.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. I'll go to Shri Prabhupada. Guru Maharaj is going to continue today with the series of Ramakatha. Guru Maharaj, whenever you are ready, you can please take over. And
yeah, I just mentioned it's still early yet.
Yes, Guru Maharaj, yeah.
So go ahead and keep your kirtan going for a few minutes, yes, and I'll be back.
Sure, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Guru Maharaj, shall we start, Guru Maharaj? Or should we play Kirtan again?
Minutes.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Right.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much. You can please take over.
Yeah, go to Madhya Lila, chapter 9, verse 29.
Yes, Guru Maharaj.
This is a verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Ramante yoginam manante satyanande chiratmani iti rama pradena so param brahma vidiyate. Translation: the supreme absolute truth is called Rama because the transcendental pleasure takes in the alluded truth, pleasure of spiritual existence. I'll read it again. The supreme absolute truth is called Rama because the transcendentalists take pleasure in the unlimited true pleasure of spiritual existence. So this is a reference to the Padmarana's verse from the Satanama Stotra of Lord Ramachandra. Om Gyan Timidam Dasya Gidanjana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Asyatya Devi Satarine Panchakalpatu Bhushyakrita Sinnaka Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go to the Brahma Samhita prayers. You can find Brahma Samhita. And we want to go down the page quite a ways. Keep going past verse number 29. Okay. Keep going. Yes. So keep going. Okay. Yeah, so verse number 39 is the one. Ramari Murti Shukalani Yamena Tishtam Nana Bhatara Akaro Bhuvanesha Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Tamanyo Govindam Mari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord, who manifests himself personally as Krishna and as the different avatars in the form of Rama, the Sringavaraham, Vamana, etc., as the subjective portions. Purport. The subjective portions are the avatars, Rama, etc., appear from Vaikuntha, and his own form, Krishna, manifests themselves with Raja in this world from Golok. The underlying sense is that Krishna Chaitanya, identical with Krishna himself, also brings about his appearance, the direct manifestation of Godhead. So this particular verse is the foundation for understanding that Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And there are many incarnations as mentioned here. Just a few are mentioned. Rama, Nrsimha, Vamana, Varaha. You can go on and on and on. The incarnations of the Lord are as unlimited as the waves of the ocean, or even more so. And what is the chief of all incarnations is Rama. So Rama is none different than Krishna, but at the same time, he manifests himself in a different way. Krishna is, as it's mentioned also in this Brahma Samhita, Ishwara Parama Krishna Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha Nadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karna Karna. Manifestations of the Godhead all proceed from the Adi Purush, who is the original source of all incarnations, and that is Krishna himself. But the incarnations of Krishna are no less powerful than Krishna. The only difference is they don't exhibit the same power as the Supreme Lord. They exhibit the power and activities according to the designation of the manifestation of their particular incarnation, which provides a particular lila or function that they are destined to execute. So, but they're all non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So anyone who says that Rama, Krishna, and all of the incarnations are different, they don't understand that the original candle, just like you take a candle and you light that candle, and then you light another candle from that candle. So you have so many candles. But you might see that wherever the candle is placed, it gives a particular illumination according to its placement. So out of all of the incarnations of God, Ram is the chief of all incarnations. And therefore, it is mentioned, as we mentioned, the manifestations of the Lord are the principle of transcendental pleasure, transcendental happiness. Ramante yoginam anante. The yogis, they don't take pleasure in the things of this material world because they know that there's no pleasure there. The pleasure in the material world is temporary and it's not real pleasure. It's based on the sense contact with the senses and the objects. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, where's that verse? It says that the essence of the verse is that transcendentalists don't take pleasure in the sources of misery which come by contact from the objects and the senses. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end, and a wise person, or in this case, the yogis, do not take pleasure in them. And of course, when we speak about the yogis, we're speaking about the highest form of yoga, and that is bhakti yoga. There are many yogis, but the highest form of yogis are the bhakti yogis, as Krishna said, yoginam api sadhanam, yoginam api siddhanam, yoginam api, what is that verse? Yoginam api, from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, the last verse in the chapter 6. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatendra natmanaha. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatendra natmanaham stradavang bhajate yomam teme yuktatamo mataha. And of all yogis, the bhakti yogi is the best of all yogis because they are engaged in devotional service, because devotional service is the highest form of yoga. And all other forms of yoga are an extension of bhakti yoga, but bhakti yoga is the supreme yoga because it's the complete yoga, where engages the living entity in loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which is the highest and most complete nature of the soul's existence. Now, the soul's existence is to serve the Lord eternally. Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sarukavunoi Swavanadi Siddhi Chitte Koriye Doi. So from the highest form of expression of the soul's existence is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotion. So after Krishna goes through the entire listing of the different yoga stages, it's referred to as a ladder. A ladder has different steps, and as you use the ladder, you go up higher and higher. So the highest stage of yoga is Bhakti Yoga. So the yogis, the real yogis, the Bhakti yogis, they are Ramante Yogi Namanante. They take pleasure only in that which is actually pleasurable. And that is devotion to the Supreme Personality of God, which is manifested by the different leelas of the Lord. And the highest leela outside of Krishna's leela, Krishna is he is the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead. But his most immediate expansion is Lord Ramachandra. So Rama cannot be separated from Krishna. When we chant the names of Krishna, we also chant the names of Rama. We have the example of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He chanted this beautiful prayer, Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Parimam. Krishna, 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 Rakshamam. Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rakshamam. Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Pahimam. When Lord Chaitanya was traveling through the Jharikanda forest, he chanted in that way, combining the two principal names of the Lord, Krishna and Rama. So it's said that Rama is a manifestation of the forms of the highest realm of the Vaikuntha realm, and that is Rama. Now, the Vaikuntha realm, the incarnations are called, or the manifestations of the Godhead are called the Narayan manifestations. And sometimes they're also referred to Vishnu manifestations. So there's one particular prayer which is called the Vishnu Sahasranam, where you chant the 100 or 1,000 names of Vishnu. So if you chant 1,000 names of Vishnu from the statements given by the Shastras, and the pure commentators on the Shastras say that 1,000 names of Vishnu equals to 3 names of Rama, and 3 names of Rama is equal to 1 name of Krishna. Krishna is the complete manifestation. He is called Adi Purusha. But here we're hearing about Rama. Rama means what? The reservoir of all pleasure. So real pleasure is found in the worship of the Lord in his different manifestations. And therefore the word Rama refers to the reservoir of all pleasure. Like we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So that gives spiritual pleasure. The name Rama means the source of all pleasure, or that pleasure which doesn't end. Material pleasure has a beginning and an end. Therefore, it's said that it is not real pleasure because it is temporary, and it's based on a flickering principle of the senses connecting with the objects of the senses. The material senses are covered. When the covered the spiritual senses are covered by the material senses. It's like a glove being covered by the hand. So you might be wearing a glove and you try to pick up an object and try to feel that object, but you're trying to feel the object through another covering, and therefore you cannot properly feel it or describe the feeling of the actual object because the glove is there. So our spiritual senses, which are our real senses, which is the senses that pertain to us, the pure living soul, are covered by these material senses known as the material body, the mind, the senses, the intelligence. And therefore, the contact with these covered senses to the external energy, which we perceive as being the reality of existence, is a false sense of happiness. And therefore, it is not real happiness. And because it is not real, it also has the characteristic of being temporary. So therefore, one who actually wants real pleasure has to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his different manifestations of incarnations. And here we say the name of Rama is the highest. We see that in each of the manifestations of incarnations, there are different personalities who worship the Lord accordingly. For example, although Krishna and Rama are the same, it's not that a devotee of Rama will find the same attraction or pleasure in worshiping Krishna as he does in Rama. Because of his nature, he's attracted to and engaged in the service of Rama. And though he may also serve Krishna, he's inclined to serve Rama. We have the example, or vice versa. A person might be inclined to serve the Supreme Lord as Rama, but their tendency is they are Krishna bhaktas. We have the example, which is very clear, of Hanumanji. Hanumanji one time was staying in Ayodhya, and Krishna was in Dwarka. So Krishna wanted to call Hanuman to come and be with him in Dwarka. So he called his carrier, Garuda, and said to Garuda, Garuda, go to Ayodhya, tell Hanuman that Krishna is in Dwarka, and he wants to see him right immediately. So Garuda very dutifully flies to Ayodhya, and Hanuman is engaged in worshiping a deity of Ram. He tries to catch the attention of Hanuman, but he's unable to do so. Hanuman is absorbed in worshiping Ram. And he's also saying, my dear Hanuman, please come. You can even take a ride from me. I will take you immediately to Dwarka. Krishna is there, and he is eager to be with you. Hanuman is practically oblivious or not even interested in what Garuda has to say. So after some time, Hanuman gets a little disturbed that he's being, interfered with him by his worship of Ram. So he swings his big, gigantic, and mighty tail. It hits Garuda, and Garuda gets knocked back a long way, and he lands all the way back in Dwarka. Krishna understands the situation, and he tells Garuda, before he tells Garuda, he turns himself into Ram, and he's there with his queen Rukmini, actually Satyabhama, and he says to Satyabhama, you become Sita, and she refuses to do so. She won't do it. That's the nature of Satyabhama. Sometimes many times she likes to disagree with or even argue with Krishna. But then he turns to his more obedient queen, and that is Rukmini, and he she immediately agrees and she manifests herself as Sita. Balaram's there and he becomes Lakshman. And Garuda goes, this time he's not so enthusiastic, but still he goes. And Krishna told him, now you tell him that Ram's in Dwarka and he wants to see him. So he flies away, he again lands, and Hanuman is still worshiping the deity of Ram. And then he begins by saying, Ram wants to see you, he's in Dwarka. And as soon as Hanuman hears it, before Garuda can even realize that Hanuman's already gone, when Garuda returns, Hanuman's already there at the feet of Sita, Ram, and Lakshman. So this is Hanuman. He only knows Ram. He only wants to know Ram. So devotees have different tendencies in terms of how they like to worship the Supreme Personality. There are Krishna bhaktas, there are Ram bhaktas, there are, of course, bhaktas of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. There are, we call them Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Then there's the Shringa bhaktas. So out of for the major manifestations of the incarnations, there is always, just like we have Sridhar Swami, who is the foremost commentator on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And in his commentations, he always refers to his worshipable deity as Lord Nrsingadev. Of course, then you have Prabodhananda Saraswati. He knows nothing but Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That's all he wants is to know. He doesn't care about any other incarnation, not even Krishna, who is the source of it. All he wants is to worship and serve as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that tendency is there. Of course, we might say that devotees are attracted to all the manifestations and incarnations of the Lord. But as one continues to worship the Lord and develop in that worship, the tendency is to be attracted to one particular manifestation of the Supreme Lord over the others. Now, in our particular society, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Prabhupada has emphasized the importance of worshiping Krishna in Vrindavan, following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But we also see that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu a few times manifests himself in a most interesting form, and that form was called Sadbhuj. Sadbhuj, you'll see the form, it's the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but then he has 6 arms, and in 2 arms, he's carrying a flute. In 2 hands, he's carrying a flute. And in another 2 hands, he is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with a begging bowl or a water pot and a sannyas staff. And in the other 2 arms, he has a bow and an arrow. So in that manifestation, he is indicating that he is non-different than Krishna and himself and Sri Ram also. So it's a great mystery how something can be one at the same time, achintya bheda bheda tattva. But that is the principle of pure spiritual essence. It manifests itself as itself, remains itself, but manifests an element of itself that is different from any other element of itself. And these are the incarnations of the Lord. So the incarnation of the Lord in the Vaikuntha realm is the highest manifestation, and that is Sri Ramachandra. And he is Krishna himself, but he comes as a warrior, as a prince, as a ruler, and as the ideal husband, the ideal son, the ideal friend, and the ideal lover. He manifests himself to teach from the position of the Godhead, what are the principles that make up, what are the qualities that make up, what are the activities that make up the ideal king, the ideal husband, the ideal son, the ideal friend. Well, that is Sri Ramchandra. So when we read and study the Ramayana, we find that there are so many moral, religious principles that are foundational for our own edification, and so we can make advancement on the path of devotional service. Because you have to perform devotional service in the mode of goodness. And the mode of goodness is characterized by certain activities and certain qualities. Each of the modes also have qualities and activities that are character descriptive of that particular mode. But the lower modes, one cannot practice spiritual life effectively. Even if one is still in the mode of passion and ignorance, they're chanting Hare Krishna and they're doing some devotional service. And that is a very, what we say, limited form of bhakti. Although it has elements of bhakti, it is more affected by the material energy, and it's not offerable to the Supreme Lord in devotion. Therefore, as Krishna instructed, one must come to the mode of goodness. And only in the mode of goodness can we serve the Supreme Personality of God and also experience real pleasure. As we were mentioned, real pleasure is spiritual pleasure. Material pleasure is not really pleasure, and that is the illusion of the material energy. That's why it's called Maya. Maya means what is not. What does that mean? What is not? It means that although you see something, it has a different effect than what you perceive it to be. You may, just like you may look at a mountain from a distance and you think it's a cloud. And then, or yeah, it looks like a cloud from a distance, but as you get closer, you see that it's not a cloud, it's a mountain. But how much do you know from that distance? All you know is it's a mountain. But when you get closer to the mountain, you can see there's greenery. And if you go on the mountain, you'll see that there are activities going on the mountain with various types of living entities. So when we, in order to come to the point of devotional service, real devotional service, pure devotional service, which is devotional service, we use the word ananya bhakti. Ananya means unalloyed, or that devotional service that is not mixed. Just like if you take gold, you may mix gold with various types of alloys, or just like you see a diamond may be an example. You have a 10-carat diamond or a 15-carat diamond, 20-carat diamond, and then you have ultimately pure diamond, where it's just diamond itself. It's not mixed with anything else. So in the same way, or even any of the other metals, when they're mixed with other alloys, their purity is decreased. But in bhakti, purity is the essence of bhakti, and real purity is to worship the Lord in loving devotional service, which gives what is called ramante. Ramante means those yogis who actually know what is real value in life, what is real pleasure. They worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as the verse says, anante, that pleasure is unlimited. That pleasure is unending, both unlimited and unending. Therefore, one should understand that there is no real pleasure in the material world. It's some kind of phantasmagoria, which goes on pleasure to keep the conditioned living entities struggling in this network of illusion, life after life after life, continuing in that circle of birth, death, disease, and old age, only because one cannot recognize where real pleasure exists. And therefore, when we hear about and chant about and remember and also serve the Supreme Lord God, the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead, in any of his incarnations, then there is Ramante, there is that pleasure which is anante or unlimited. So the manifestations of the Godhead are unlimited, and each one is fully powerful, but they exhibit their power according to the particular manifestation of that incarnation. But Krishna is the ultimate principle or the original principle of Godhead, and his immediate expansion for performing his activities in this material world is Sri Ramachandra. Again, the word Rama means reservoir of all pleasure, that pleasure which is real. Spiritual pleasure, it stands the test of time, and time actually is subordinate to real pleasure, because when the manifestations of material time are no longer present, transcendental pleasure exists, still continues to exist. That is Rama. And we worship Rama as the Supreme Personality of God, the reservoir of all pleasure. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. One lecture, Prabhupada says, wherever you see the name Krishna, you have to understand the name Rama is personally present. Why? Because Krishna represents that pleasure which is unlimited, and therefore he's called Rama. Okay, so this is a little bit about transcendental pleasure, about how the Lord manifests himself by himself in different forms of himself to give transcendental pleasure to various types of living entities who want to worship him in a certain way. Okay, so we'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj, for such a nice class and nice pastimes. I really like the pastime of Hanuman. Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj. Dear devotees, if you have any questions or comments or realizations, please go ahead. You can unmute and please turn on your cameras. That would be very nice to see all of you. Thank you so much.
What is real pleasure? Sri Devi.
Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Thank you. Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to your lotus feet. Thank you. As Srivati said, this was such a sweet and beautiful pastime of Hanumanji. His adorable Lord Ram. He didn't want to even think of anyone else. Guru Maharaj, my question is precisely on this point that you mentioned, that when we are in the lower modes, we cannot really practice bhakti yoga properly because we are still so contaminated. And the real pleasure that we are all seeking is only available in our relationship with Krishna. So the more purified we become, we can actually taste real pleasure. But because we are so habituated to looking for pleasure in temporary material things, because we are in the lower modes, our default mode is to fall back again, looking for pleasure in this and that and the other. So how to overcome this tendency and choose the spiritual rather than again falling back to material pursuits?
Our tendency is our conditioned nature. So we have two natures. One is called conditioned, and one is called constitutional. Condition means that that we have been in this material realm in various species of life. Miche Mayadavase, Kacho Beshe, Kacho Habubububai. With so many lifetimes, life after Karanam Guna Sangha Sosarasa Joni Janmasu. From the highest planet down to the lowest. They're all, the living entity is revolving in different species of life, sometimes as demigods, sometimes as trees and plants and other species of life, sometimes in the middle planets as humans. So this transmigration from body to body, life after life in the different realms of existence is long term. There's a term, it's called Nitya Bhara. Nitya means eternal and Bhara means conditioned. So it refers to the living entity in the material world as Nitya Bhara. But when you analyze the definition of the words separately, you find that it seems to be a contradiction. That how can the living entity be eternally conditioned? It's not possible, or it's not even true. The living entity is not eternally conditioned, but the term eternally conditioned is given upon the living entity in the material world. Why? Because it's so long term that one cannot actually even search out or begin to search out how I fell into this material world. And sometimes it says millions and millions of lifetimes in different species of life we've been here. And so that conditioned nature becomes more and more stronger each time we take a material body in the material realm. And so when we want to somehow or other get out of that material nature, that material consciousness, there's an effort that has to be made. It's not easy because the tendency is to go in the same direction, the material direction. We say, well, we can see the material, we can feel it, we're in the midst of it, but how much do we know and how much can we experience of the spiritual? But the one we can experience so much of, or hardly any of, is the reality, and this material is simply a shadow reflection of the reality. So we're in the darkness of ignorance, being in the material world, and we identify. Just like the story of Plato. Plato talked about the cave, where people are inside the cave, and the only light that they have in the cave is they have some fire that is inside the cave, and it's reflecting light off the wall of the cave. And they see the shadows onto the wall of the cave, and they think that this is the actual existence. Someone comes and tells them, well, get out of your cave. Outside of the cave, there's the bright sunshine, which is natural light, which covers everywhere. They're so much stuck into their cave and absorbed in the activities of cave-like, they can't even accept the fact that there's something different or something better. So just like when we try to preach to the non-devotees, it becomes very difficult when you actually speak about something that is actually eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss, and it's way beyond this material world. Sometimes they say that's all mythology, it's just somebody's imagination. But we understand it is the reality because it's coming from Krishna, it's coming from the great acharyas who are pure devotees in the line. It's coming from Shastra. So we have to act based on knowledge. That knowledge says that who you are and where you are meant to place your time, energy, and effort. And there, when you do that gradually, and you do it continuously, the problem is that we don't do it continuously. We jump back to the material every once in a while, just for some kind of temporary satisfaction. And therefore, we break the flow of our relationship with the spiritual. And therefore, it appears to be almost non-existent. So devotional service means Haitukiya Priyata, Yayatma Supersediti, and that's mentioned in the Bhagavatam, Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo, Yato Bhakti Ahoksaje, Haitukiya Priyata, Yayatma Supersediti. Yayatma Supersediti, Ahaitukiya Priyata. Ahaituki means without exception, without personal motivation, and priyata means without cessation. So only when one comes to that level of bhakti can they actually experience the transcendental pleasure that comes continuously from the spiritual realm. And so therefore we say stay in the spiritual and don't keep going back and forth between the material and spiritual. That is our tendency. It's called our conditioned nature. Conditioned nature appears to be and seems to be stronger and more real than our constitutional nature. But it's not. It's just the appearance. And it's due to the long-term association with the material energy. So therefore, the process of bhakti is the means to get out of that illusion and back into the reality, where we can experience, even while we're in this material world, transcendental happiness, which is the element of our spiritual existence. We get increments of that as we practice devotional service. But if we want to continue to develop that quality of those pleasure and that knowledge, then we have to stop going back into the material energy for some kind of temporary satisfaction. And therefore, one has to know what is spiritual and what is material. That discrimination allows us to choose the right realm of existence. And of course, the process itself is there. Chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, associate with devotees, read, hear, and understand the scriptures, apply those scriptures in your life. Take only Krishna Prasadam. These are the elements that awaken our spiritual nature. They contradict or they overshadow our material activities, where we chant cinema songs, we read novels about fictitious characters in the material world. We watch various types of media that simply displays some kind of entertainment. When we eat food that is cooked by non-devotees, or we eat food that is not offered to the Lord, these are the same fortifications that have brought us to the material world. And if we continue in that way, we are simply supporting our conditioned nature. We have to stop it and engage in devotional service. That's all. Yeah, you know, we learn from Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj performed the 9 angas of bhakti, the nine limbs of bhakti completely. And Prabhupada makes that. He used his ears to hear the glories of the Lord. He used his tongue to speak the glories of the Lord and to taste the prasadam offered to the Lord. He uses his hands to massage the bodies of the devotees. He used his eyes to see the beautiful form of the Lord. He used his legs to walk to the temple of the Lord. All of his limbs, all of his senses were engaged in devotional service. So that's required if you want to stop jumping out of the spiritual and back into the material. And that's supported by what we say, advanced devotee association. Sarusanga, Sarusanga, Sarvasastri Hoy, Lavamata, Sarusange, Sarvasiddhi Hoy. 1 minute association with the pure devotion, one can become purified completely from all material tendencies, more material activities. So it's a process. But we have to stop going back to the material for some kind of false relief.
Yes, Guru Maharaj, I can see that when I'm with devotees, I'm in Kirtan, it is really wonderful, it's very blissful. And then when I'm back again, the internet is there, the Ukraine war is there, and this is happening and that is happening. And it's so compelling that I'm starting to see, oh, what is happening here? Oh my goodness, this is happening, that is happening. And before I know it, 20 minutes have gone. Instead of looking at database, which is also on the computer, I'm looking at all these other things and I'm realizing this is just pulling me more and more into all this stuff.
Yeah. We have our choice, but our conditioned nature pushes us again towards the material. We have to gradually replace that conditioned nature with our constitutional nature, our spiritual nature. We have to act spiritually, even if we don't feel like it.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
And association is the strength we need to stay connected with the spiritual energy.
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for that.
Vrindavanath.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and happy Ekadashi.
Okay.
Guru Maharaj, we discussed.
Why do we introduce all of these terms like happy Ram Navami and happy Ekadasi and happy this and happy that, and happy New Year and happy this? We've introduced all of these material tendency. We don't care about being happy. That's not our program. Our program is, you say, well, if you want to, acknowledge, you say, all glories to Ekadasi. You don't say happy Ekadasi. Ekadasi is always happy.
Sure, Guru Maharaj, good learning. Thank you.
Happy Krishna, happy Rama.
My mood, Guru Maharaj, used to be like when we are saying these.
When we just bring all these materials, innuendos into Krishna consciousness. Happy New Year. That's what people say. People want to be happy, so they're all saying, the body's already happy. You don't have to worry about being happy. All you have to do is engage in. So you say all glories to Ekadasi or Jai Ekadasi or Jai Sri Ram. You don't say happy Ram Navami. It is happy. Right?
All glories to Ekadashi Devi.
Okay, there you go. You got it.
So, Guru Maharaj, we discussed different forms of Lord. But my question is it okay for a devotee to have a strong affection for one particular form or deity of Lord?
No, that's actually desirable. Yeah, that's desirable. We may worship all of the incarnations, but we may feel especially attracted to one particular form. You see, the great souls, they're like that. They have their Istadev, their mood of worship. But that comes, what Prabhupada emphasized as followers of Sri Chaitanya, we should make Krishna our Istade. But you'll see, although he said that, you'll see there are also tendencies within the society of devotees towards other deities, towards Nrsingadev, towards, you have Nrsinga Bhaktas, you have Ram Bhaktas, you have Lord Chaitanya Bhaktas. Of course, Lord Chaitanya is not different than Radha and Krishna, so it's the same. Yeah, so that's actually desirable to come to the point of being focused on one particular form of book. Yeah.
So, Guru Maharaj, I have just related question because I feel strong bhakti when serving Radharani, and while serving other forms like Nityananda and Balarams and others, my mood is that, and prayers remains that may I get their mercy and their blessing, so could serve Radharani better and her servants better. So, like somewhere in my heart, like because many times I heard that Radharani is very confidential things we should not discuss, we should not think about. I feel like, is that right mood? Like, because whenever there is Radharani glorification or anything, I feel very much.
That's something that is personal, but it's also the most authorized. There is they in Barsanadam, they're Radha Bhaktas. When they refer to Krishna as Radhanath, another name for Krishna is Radhanath, but they have a different explanation of the name Radhanath. They say Radha who is Nath. You go to Barsan and they say, yeah, we like Krishna only because Radharani likes Krishna. But yeah, so there is the Radha Bhaktas. Yeah, they're there. Jai Sri Radhe.
All glories to Shri Radhe.
Yeah, so that's glorious. But we shouldn't so much make that a public display. That's something you should keep more confidential.
Sure, Guru Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Namrata Mataji, you want to go ahead?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. This is my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Guru Maharaj, I wanted to ask, there are many devotees, many senior devotees and devotees which has gone long way with Prabhupada, and then later they left the movement. Some of them, they converted towards the Ritvik side of Krishna consciousness. So is this considered as the fall down? Some of them, they just joined other Gaudiya paths. So is this considered a fall down?
If they're following the process of bhakti as given by the Shastras, then they are rightly situated. But using your example as Ritvik is something that is, there is a term called Ritvik, but it's not a movement. The Ritvik movement is bogus, because they somehow or other reinterpret Prabhupada's statements in a different way and come up with that idea. But there's many papers that have been written, and there's also various types of discussions that have been, and it's been shown that Ritvik is a deviation from Srila Prabhupada's teachings. But the term Ritvik is not a wrong term, it's just misapplied in this case. Ritvik means a particular type of priest is called a Ritvik, who facilitates on behalf of someone else. It's called Ritvik priest. So, but there are other bona fide, you just like you have Prabhupada's God brothers, they're called the Gaudiya Math. They are Vaishnavas. They are following Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, and the process that they're following is authorized. And then you go different places in India, you have Sri Sampradaya, they're bona fide. You have the Madhva Sampradaya, they're also bona fide. There are 4 bona fide Sampradayas. Vishnu Swami, or what is called the Rudra Sampradaya. Sri Sampradaya, the Lakshmi Sampradaya. Madhva Sampradaya, or the, coming from Madhva. Yeah,
Nimbarka.
or Nimbarka, Nimbarka Sampradaya. So there is one verse, I don't remember the exact quotation, that anything outside of the Sampradayas is not bona fide. So there's different kinds of Vaishnavas, yeah. It's not that if you're in ISKCON, you're a devotee, and if you're not, then you're not a devotee. There is some ISKCON devotees, I think, also have that idea that if you're not in ISKCON, you're not a devotee, but that's not true. But then you have to see if they're actually following a bona fide sampradaya, and they're following that sampradaya in the way that it's meant to be followed. Even in our movement, we have devotees who don't follow according to what Prabhupada has given.
So that's not actually a fall down, just maybe
It could be a fall down, yeah. Now, what is it? Sampradayahina mantra tantra visharada. That's part of the verse. One has to follow the sampradayas, otherwise their devotional service is not bona fide.
So basically exploring within the Gaudiya Sampradaya isn't a fall down.
No, Gaudiya Sampradaya and the Gaudiya Math, we have to use the word Gaudiya Math. We are in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. We're Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. That's our movement. And that's also, the Gaudiya Math is also part of that same movement, because we include Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He is also the Sampradaya Acharya. Does that make sense?
Yes, Maharaj. I got this question because I have heard that many of the elevated and many senior devotees in the later stage of their life, they left the moment and joined other parts of Gaudiya Sampradaya. So I was just thinking about that.
If they're following an authorized group, then that's fine. That means they're authorized, they're bona fide, they're fixed. They can be, they're. But Prabhupada never wanted us, he didn't want us to leave ISKCON and go somewhere else. He said, stay. He said, because if you hear something different than what I've given you, you'll be confused in your devotional service. So I mean, I come in contact with devotees who are in the ISKCON, and they're, following other persons who are not in our movement, but who claim to be Vaishnavas, who claim to follow Srila Prabhupada, but who are not within the ISKCON society. If you read, let's see, where Srimati, go to fourth canto. I think it's 9th chapter, verse number 11. 4:9:11. It might be 4:11:9 or 4:9:11. Let's try 4:9:11 first. Let's see if it's there. It's in the purport. Yeah. Here we go. We have therefore established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Anyone who is trying to be aloof from this Krishna conscious society and yet engaged in Krishna consciousness is living in a great hallucination. This is not possible. Now, people will take issue with that, but it's qualified by, the four sampradayas. So Prabhupada, if you're here in Krishna consciousness, why would you leave? Everything is there. So people leave saying, well, Prabhupada didn't give everything, but that's not correct. Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj gave many classes and explaining in detail and showing by example how Srila Prabhupada gave everything that we need to go back home, back to Godhead. It's all there. Anyone who's trying to be aloof from this Krishna conscious society and yet engage in Krishna consciousness is living in a great hallucination, for it's not possible. So that refers to people who go outside of the society and want to practice independently on their own, or create their own little group and think it's fine. I'm a follower of Prabhupada. Well, Prabhupada said, you want to follow me, you have to stay within this ISKCON society. Now, Prabhupada said, ISKCON is my body. So sometimes the body gets sick, but that doesn't mean it's still not Prabhupada. So if the body gets sick, you don't give up the body, you try to cure the body. So people see certain things within our movement that are actually off, that are not really bona fide. And they have been affected by that maybe directly. And they think, well, I should go somewhere else. But Prabhupada said, no, stay and fix it. If something is off, fix it. If you get sick, you think, well, I got sick, well, that's the end of everything. No, take the cure. So that's the reasons for leaving. Apparently, something is not ideal within the society, or something is off, whatever. So the GBC has been struggling in an ongoing way in order to do things, and a lot of times they mess up. There's no question about it. They don't get it right. Or they waste time in things that are not necessary. And then people think, well, yeah. But Prabhupada said, no, stay within the society and work to make the corrections, to not be affected by the wrong directions. And then you have to understand, well, what is right and what is wrong. Yeah. So Prabhupada established the governing body commission as the ultimate managerial authority within the society. So it's their duty to represent Srila Prabhupada in everything, and they're doing their best in that area. Although we might honestly say there is some lack in certain areas. But I've seen as the years go on that the GBC is becoming more and more representative of Srila Prabhupada as time goes on. But once in a while, they fall into some. Here, I'll give you an example. Another verse from the 4th canto. Go to chapter 30. I think it's one of the later chapters. Verse number 8. Chapter 30, verse number 8. Yeah. Okay, so we can read the translation. Somebody read the translation.
Namrata Mataji, you want to read?
Yes.
Anyone?
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "My dear sons of the King, I am very much pleased by the friendly relationships among you. All of you are engaged in one occupation, devotional service. I am so pleased with your mutual friendship that I wish you all good fortune. Now you may ask a benediction of me."
Read the purport. This is where you get the message.
Okay. Since the sons of King Prachinab
Prachinabarhishat.
Prachinabarishat were all united in Krishna consciousness, the Lord was very pleased with them. Each and every one of the sons of King Prachinabarhishat was an individual soul, but they were united in offering transcendental service to the Lord. The unity of the individual soul attempting to satisfy the Supreme Lord or rendering service to the Lord is real unity.
Yeah, so here's you. This is the principle of unity. When everyone is attempting to satisfy the Supreme Lord, that is real unity. Okay.
In the material world, such unity is not possible. Even though people may officially unite, they all have different interests. In the United Nations, for instance, all the nations have their particular national ambitions, and consequently, they cannot be united. This unity between individual souls is so strong within the material world that even in a society of Krishna consciousness, members sometimes appear disunited due to their having different opinions and learning towards material things.
Leaning towards material things. So
Leaning
here's
towards
apparent disunity apparently appears for these two reasons: different opinions, leaning towards material things. So Prabhupada makes that point. Okay, so this is the indication that there appears to be disunity. Now, the next line.
Actually, in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be two opinions. There is only one goal, to serve Krishna to one's best ability. If there is some disagreement over service, such disagreement is to be taken as spiritual. Those who are actually engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be disunited in any circumstances. This makes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very happy and willing to award all kinds of benedictions to his devotees as indicated in this verse. We can see that the Lord is immediately prepared to award all benedictions to the sons of King Prachinabarhishat.
So you see, Prabhupada gives the point that leaning towards material things and having different opinions appears to create disunity. But Prabhupada said it's only an appearance. As long as people are engaged in devotional service, there is unity. Although there's some disagreement on how to serve or what service we should emphasize, still there is unity based on the principle that everyone is engaged in devotional service. So you see the tendencies that cause things to be appear to be disunited. Yeah, so devotees disagree with each other. This happens all the time. But as long as we're all engaged in devotional service, there's where we unite based on that principle. And when we all follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions accordingly, then that unity is perfect. And that is the way to render devotional service, follow the instructions of Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, you know, he mentioned different emphasis. He said, you can serve in this way, you can serve in that way, you can distribute books, you can cook, you can worship the deity, you can do different activities. They're all devotional service. And there's where the unity is understood through the process that everyone is serving. But then he says, leaning towards material things. So that means that in our devotional service, we still have material. We're trying to get material benefits from our devotional service. So that really gives a sense of disunity. But then Prabhupada qualifies that, but he says in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be two opinions. There's only one goal or one opinion: serve Krishna to the best of one's ability. So you might see one's ability might be greater than another's ability. But when you're serving to your best, then there is no disagreement and everything is spiritual. You might say, well, you know, Prabhupada said, distribute my books. Therefore, that's the only service. Everybody else is in Maya. But yeah, Prabhupada did emphasize sometimes certain services, but when you clarify his instructions in relationship to what appears to be contradictory, you'll find that he always comes back to the point that devotional service is absolute. So understanding devotional service means to really study Srila Prabhupada. You have to not only hear, you have to study and you have to understand how Prabhupada has applied his instructions that seem to work in different ways according to time, place, and circumstance. And that's true with the whole principle of devotional service. You'll find apparent contradictions in Prabhupada's statements. You find apparent contradictions in the process of devotional service. But they're apparent, that's all. Therefore, if you can't study and read Prabhupada's books and study and hear from him, then you have to hear from one who knows, that's all. You can't do it on your own, then accept an authority who has that understanding, and then that becomes your direction, your motivation, your understanding.
Maharaj, I think there are a lot of deeper aspects to this.
Yeah, it's really, it's very deep and apparently very complicated, but Prabhupada's words sort of simplify everything so it's understandable. He said there cannot be two opinions, although there appears to be.
Yes, Maharaj. Okay. Hare Krishna. I think I'll explore and contemplate till I get any other question.
Okay, do we have anything else, Srimati?
I don't see any hand raised, Guru Maharaj. Yeah, Kanchanapchatas Prabhuji. Yeah. Can go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All praise to Prabhupada, all praise to you, Maharaj. Well, just following on from the points just raised, I think one thing that comes to mind for me that I find a little difficult to understand is how devotees who leave ISKCON and maybe even offend the devotees who are dedicated to Prabhupada, and how they still have so much Shakti and empowerment to still do so many things, like build big temples or just do other various preaching activities with lots of, it looks like lots of empowerment, but at the same time they're offending the devotees in ISKCON. So I just find that a little difficult to comprehend. I was just wondering if you could share anything on that.
Yeah. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was here, he speeded up the reactions of both pure devotional service and offenses. When Srivas Thakur was offended by Gopal Chakravarti within Gopal Chapala, within a few days he received leprosy. When certain devotees performed devotional service and pleased the Lord immediately gave him pure love of God. So Lord Chaitanya speeded up the reactions of both sinful activities and spiritual benefit. In other words, you could immediately get love of God, you could immediately get a reaction for your offensive activity. That happened to Amoga Leela, that happened to Gopal Chakravarti, all got immediate reactions. Now that Lord Chaitanya is not here, those same destinations or same reactions are there, but they're lingering in the time element. So they will happen in due course of time. And that's explained, yeah. That although a person may commit offenses and still look like they're very glorious in devotional service, those offenses will catch up with them. We use the example of a silo. A silo is a big long cylinder where you put the grains on the very top. And then when you want to get the grains out, there's a little door on the bottom. It's called a chute. You open the door and you get the grains there. So when you put the grains in, it's going on the top. When you open it up, it comes on the bottom. So what's being put in the top is not what's coming out of the bottom immediately. See the analogy?
Yeah.
So what one is getting immediate may be simply due to their past devotional credits.
Okay.
And what will come eventually will be the reactions of their present activities. And that's vice versa.
So it's just a time element.
Yeah. No one can get around the fact that if someone makes offense to a Vaishnava, that reaction will come, but it may not come immediately. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu he wanted to show that this is the reactions you get from both pious or spiritual activities and offensive activities. So he speeded up the reactions when he was.
Oh, okay. Just so we can see it.
Yeah.
Okay. And this could take lifetimes even, Maharaj, or?
It can manifest in lifetimes, or it can manifest in the same lifetime.
And in the meantime, Krishna is using them as an instrument to preach also, that's the bit where I get confused, because
yeah, the demons are going on. It looks like, the demons are, they got big positions, they got a lot of money, they got a lot of power, they get a lot of influence, but soon the collective karma of their sinful activities will reach a certain point, and then it'll cash in. In the meantime, they are suffering. But it's the same with devotees. When you offend a devotee, You may externally seem to be very good, but internally, you're not tasting that happiness anymore.
Mm. And I
And
guess
that may be a response to Namrata's question, is that sometimes because of that, they eventually leave.
makes
Taste,
sense.
the taste is gone, yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Sridevi Mataji, you want to ask any more questions?
Actually, I just wanted to thank Guru Maharaj for telling us to really read and study and understand Srila Prabhupada's books. It's such an important point, and I really do want to become very much inclined like that towards making reading a daily habit, a daily study habit actually. Because Srila Prabhupada said, my disciples should know my books as a lawyer knows his law books. So we must really know Srila Prabhupada's books so that we defend the philosophy if challenged, we should be able to stand up for what we are practicing. And for that, a very thorough knowledge of what Srila Prabhupada has given us is essential. So I really pray for this blessing to be able to deeply study and understand and apply the words of Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, I'm looking at 3 quotes that are pasted on the wall in front of me, all about the importance of Prabhupada's books. One says, if you are strong in your position by reading books, Vedic literature, then you become very, very favorite to Krishna. Spoken by Prabhupada, July 15th, 1975. Another one, Bhagavad is the only guide. Read Bhagavad repeatedly, whole life. Safe, always, always. Whenever there's time, read, read, read. Mayapur, February 16th, 1977. Another one, whatever I have wanted to say, I have said in my books. If I live, I will say something little more. If you want to know me, read my books. You have to understand one thing. Prabhupada gave information in his lectures, in his books, in his room conversations, in his letters, in his morning walks. Now, the books are the foundation for all concrete knowledge. What Prabhupada said many in the other areas are also correct, but they may also apply to time, place, and circumstance. So therefore, if you really want to get Prabhupada in the essence, it's in the books. And if it's in the books and it's somewhere else, Prabhupada said in 2 different places, then you take what's in the books as being the absolute. That's why Prabhupada said, my books will be the law books for the next 10,000 years. Everything Prabhupada said is important, but if there's any discussion about understanding, then you go to the books. And I can give you examples of where people try to make a point of saying Prabhupada emphasized this, but it's not in his books, it's in his letters. Prabhupada also said, my letters are very individual. They refer to the person I'm writing to a lot of times. But he also made absolute statements in his letters, but not all of his statements are absolute in the letters or in the room conversations. It's a great study. There's a nice seminar put together by Mother Lakshmi Moni about the importance of reading and studying Srila Prabhupada's books. I've given that seminar at least 6 times, half a dozen times. It's a PowerPoint presentation. Yeah, it's not so easy to understand things. And we usually pick and choose according to what we like. And that can also take us away from what is actually beneficial. Be right back. Someone's at the door.
Guru Maharaj, I think there are no more questions. I don't see any hand raised. So we are almost reaching 1.5 hour mark, Guru Maharaj.
Okay, we can stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. Very nice class and nice question answer session. Thank you.
Srila Prabhupada.
Ki jai.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Guru Maharaj.